It's yet another presidential election that's put Kenya on the edge. Incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta has been declared the winner, but his rival is refusing to concede defeat. So how will Kenyatta overcome this? And what does it mean for democracy in Kenya? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine. Now, extending a hand of friendship. That's a message from Kenya's newly elected incumbent president, Uhuru Kenyatta, to his rival after one of the most hotly contested campaigns in recent years. But the opposition is refusing to concede defeat. There's been violence in the opposition stronghold of Kisumu, as well as in the capital, Nairobi. We've got a lot to get to with our guests, but first, Mohamed Ado has the latest from Nairobi.
After a three-day wait for the results of a heated presidential election that brought the country to a near standstill, a winner was finally declared.
I therefore wish to declare Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta
Uhuru Kenyatta won re-election by a significant margin, defeating his long-time opponent Raila Odinga. Uhuru made an emotional and conciliatory speech to a nation divided by one of the most hotly contested elections in history.
To our brothers who were worthy competitors, we are not enemies. We are all citizens of one republic. As with any competition, there shall always be winners and there shall be losers, but we all belong to one great nation called Kenya, and I extend a hand of friendship.
Election officials had spent most of Thursday and Friday verifying results sent in to the National Tallying Center from all corners of the country. Moments before the results were declared, agents of the opposition candidate Raila Odinga walked out in protest, saying they did not want to be party to the process of the declaration of the results. They say this is not the last we have heard of this matter. Raila claims the results are fictitious. The long-time opposition leader first alleged that a hacker had gained access to the Electoral Commission's database and then accused the Commission of concealing the actual results, which he said proved he was the winner. The Commission denied both claims but did confirm there had been a failed hacking attempt. At one point, the opposition claimed victory, fanning already rising tensions.
I think this has been an entire charade. This is a disaster. You do not just hold an election for the sake of it. And the election is not about announcing winners and losers. Elections is a process, is about participation, is about exercise of political rights.
In Nairobi, Kenyatta's victory was greeted with celebrations. Hundreds of his supporters gathered in the heart of the city. Protests followed the declaration of the results in parts of Kisumu, one of Kenya's biggest cities and an opposition stronghold. Demonstrators also burned tires, set up roadblocks and clashed with the police in parts of the capital, Nairobi. Security has been beefed up across the country. Most Kenyans are keen to avoid a repeat of the violence that followed the 2007 election, in which more than 1,200 people were killed. For people here, there is a sense of relief, but without the opposition conceding, also some nervousness about the days ahead. Mohamed Ado, Al Jazeera, Nairobi, Kenya.
All right, time to introduce our guests now. They're all in Kenya, and we start in Nairobi with Joseph Simekha. He's from the Presidential Campaign Secretariat for Raila Odinga in Bomet County. Joining us on Skype, we have Joyce Laboso, who is the National Assembly Deputy Speaker for the ruling Jubilee Party, as well as the newly elected Governor of Bomet County. Also in Nairobi, we have Irungu Houghton, who's Director of Chapter 1. That's a civil society organisation which focuses on governance and accountability. Welcome to you all. Irungu, can I start with you because you are in the capital? We've just seen some scenes which look terribly ominous. We've got soldiers on the streets, tyres are burning, we've got lots of young men fleeing down streets. How representative are those scenes of the situation in the country as a whole, would you say?
Well, I think if you were to isolate it, we've probably got about 3 out of 85 wards in Nairobi that are seeing scenes of this nature. And if you look at it nationally, it's probably 2 of the 47 counties. So it is a fraction of the country, but it is nevertheless very worrying. And we're hearing from the Kenya Red Cross that up to 30 people may have lost their lives since the announcement yesterday. And therefore there is a matter of concern and an urgency for all the political leaders to call on the demonstrators to be non-violent and to refrain from any form of violence on the streets of Nairobi, but at the same time also to call on the police to exercise more restraint and to ensure that they do not use excessive force on civilians.
And coming to you, Joseph, when will your coalition, the NASA coalition and Raila Odinga, accept defeat and accept the election results and then put an end to the tension that is costing human lives?
You accept defeat in an election if and when you have been defeated justly and in accordance with the rules provided for conducting this kind of election. You do not accept as an election that has been stolen. You do not accept defeat. Raila Odinga has not been defeated. This election has been stolen. It's so blatant. It's so clear. So there's no reason why he should accept. And this is not about Raila Odinga and the NASA coalition. This is about Kenya. This election was for Kenyans. This decision was for Kenyans, not for Raila Odinga, not for the NASA coalition.
And Joseph, but nobody seems to agree with you. All the international monitors from the African Union, the EU, the Carter Society led by John Kerry, they all said that the election was conducted in a free and fair manner, that they thought the result was a fair and accurate representation of the will of the people of Kenya.
Although international and local observers have a role to play in an election, the responsibility of making decisions in an election is the responsibility of the voters, the citizens, those who are voting. Secondly, the determinant or the standard of freeness and fairness of this election is as prescribed by our constitution, our laws, and our procedures. It's not according to what Kerry thinks. It's not according to what the EU thinks. It's not according to what the African Union thinks. And you know what? This is a very common song that observers sing. For them, for as long as there is a sense of false peace or a false sense of peace, they will tell you that. They will say the election, in spite of a few irregularities, that are true reflection of the will of Kenyans. And the people who are demonstrating right now are Kenyans, aren't they? The people who are getting killed are Kenyans, aren't they? There's a grievance they have. That's why they are demonstrating.
And Joyce, coming to you, we've just heard some of the objections coming from Joseph's side in the election. After spending at least $500 million on this election, wouldn't you have expected it to have been a perfect, pristine affair instead of having all these problems that have led to the results being questioned by the opposition and, as we're seeing in the country, people on the streets protesting and, of course, some, unfortunately, losing their lives?
That is one way of looking at it, but I can assure you that the elections were held in a very transparent and free and fair way. All that the complaints are being made, all of us were seeing the results coming real time. Each person and all the forms that they have talked about. So the physical form that has been signed in every polling center, showing exactly the number of votes that were cast in that polling center, signed by the agents across the country. And then there is, of course, that which was being transmitted, that was being transmitted digitally. So really, of all the elections that have been done in this country, these are the elections that have been the most transparent and the most, free and fair and very, where we were able to see the results as they were coming in. What is going on right now I mean, it is just a result of not being, not really getting the numbers. It's not anybody's fault. The Jubilee Party that I belong to, did everything, bent over backwards. All the things that the opposition had asked for were done.
So why do you think,
really,
Joyce, sorry, Joyce, but so why do you think there are so many objections with regard to the procedure of this election, the process? Why are there so many complaints coming from the opposition?
It is not so many. It is not so many complaints. It is not so many complaints. Quite clearly, I mean, if the observers, have you read the reports from the observers across the different groups of observers? It's just the disappointment, the fact that they just didn't have the numbers. You don't, it's not like there's a big problem across the country. It is very sporadic and in very, areas that the opposition have, and to me, it's just like an expression of disappointment. But really, the process was very, very clear from the beginning. We got all the information right through. All the time, we had very clear information of what was happening next. And on the screens across the country, everybody was able to follow, the numbers as they unfolded before the Kenyans and before the world.
Okay, Joseph. So Joyce maintains that the process was followed methodically. The numbers are right. There is integrity in the result. You're just bad losers.
No, that is not true, and this was very public, that the process up to voting went on very well. People, queued for long, and people voted in an orderly manner.
That's the easy bit,
when
isn't it?
Came to transmission of results, that is where the problem is. And I will tell you, in some places, polls closed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 7 minutes past 5, you have results streaming. When would they have counted? When would they have counted? Can polls close at 5 and 7 minutes later you have results? I have a constituency in Western Kenya where even the returning officer told me she was shocked because she could see the results of her constituency on television screens, but she had not yet announced the results. So the problem was not with the process of voting. The election was stolen through manipulation of transmission of the system of transmitting results. So what you are seeing, what Joyce is calling results, is not results for this election. Results for this election, most likely Raila Odinga will release them on Monday based on the opposition's tallying system and also based on IEBC's own servers. But what you are seeing on what you saw on our television screens, those were not results. Even the chairman of the IEBC said as much. He said that he would wait until he gets results from the forms on which constituencies record results.
All right.
But he didn't follow up on his own promise.
Irungu,
so they relied on these fake numbers.
All right. Irungu, from where you're sitting, having observed this, this is the 6th presidential election in Kenya since 1992. Why are they always so bitter? Why are they always contested? And why do they always end up with people losing their lives?
I think to be fair, our elections have always been, I guess, what you call vigorous competitions for political power. The last 2 elections have probably been the most controversial. The one that was clearly infamous was the 2007 election, but also the 2013 election was equally controversial, even if it did not lead to the loss of life that we saw in 2007. But I think what we really need to recognize at this moment is that NASA had a legitimate grievance at the time that they were complaining about the transmission of the results without the accompanying Form 34As and Bs. And I think it was correct for them to argue that the process needed to immediately be verifiable by access to those forms. Those forms were then made available, and I sat in the tallying center for 4 days alongside the presidential agents, and I watched them go through that process. And after 4 days of essentially verification and cross-checking from the ground level up to the tallying center, to be honest, neither the political parties nor the international observers nor the national observers have been able to demonstrate that there were significant variances or differences in the Form 34 that had been signed by by the party agents and what was being transmitted. So I think we have to say, on the basis of that alone, that the election results were credible, and until NASA can demonstrate that there has been I guess what you'd call a manipulation of those figures, my view is that the result that we had last night is probably the correct result. On the issues of rigging and I guess what you'd call kind of digital malpractice and cyber insecurity, I think this is yet to be demonstrated, and one of the concerns that I have is the demand that was made just before the announcement by NASA that the IEBC must declare the Right Honourable Raila Odinga the President, and the fact that they continue to maintain that on Tuesday they will announce that he is in fact the President. I think this borders on unconstitutionality and is not a healthy way of concluding this process. I think the position of NASA was much stronger when they requested for the Form 34As, and when they received them, having verified them and not being able to show a significant difference, I think at that point it would have been honourable to concede the election.
So, Joseph, the onus now is upon you and your coalition to provide evidence, incontrovertible evidence of what you say is malfeasance in the whole process, and bearing in mind the responsibility with all of the leadership in Kenya, of course, is the protection of ordinary people. At the moment, people are dissatisfied and people are dying. I repeat this because that is the bottom line, isn't it? People are losing their lives.
People are not just losing their lives or dying, as you're putting it. They are being killed by the police. The people who are going out in the streets to demonstrate are not killing each other. It's the police who are shooting them dead.
So shouldn't you and your coalition should intervene quickly and provide the evidence that you've been challenged to provide as quickly as possible? The longer there is this tense standoff, the more people are going to die.
For every complaint that NASA has raised, and NASA and its presidential candidate have raised with the IEBC, evidence has been provided. There's no complaint that has been raised on the basis of no evidence. And we don't have an obligation to give this to anybody other than the IEBC for it to take action. We are not in a court of law. In the coming 12 to 24 hours, NASA will now provide comprehensive evidence now to the Kenyan public, from whom this election was stolen. So we hear those people who are saying that we should have provided this to the media, to observers. We think they are wrong. When the media began to play along in this game, we went and they were saying that we do not have a tallying center. We went and showed them one of our tallying centers, and they saw the operation and they could confirm that we are doing a very systematic job, receiving forms from all over across the country and very systematically tallying them to see the actual results of this election. So there is evidence, and IEBC has been provided with that evidence.
Joyce, coming to you in Bomet County, ultimately this is about the people's faith and confidence in the result of the election. So clearly you have the supporters of the opposition NASA coalition, at least 40% of the country who don't have faith in the election result. What exactly do you propose to do in order to allay their fears that their votes have been stolen?
I think at this point, really, the best that can be done is to really get these people to calm down and stop these protests and demonstrations, because now we are losing lives for really no apparent reason. So for me, I mean, that process and this evidence that you are really asking for needs to come out very quickly, because everybody has been saying, you said you wanted the Form 34, A and B, they were provided. And these are forms, 40,000 of them were provided from every single polling center in the country. So you have the hard copies of what of the results coming from the polling centers, and you have what was provided digitally, and both of them tally. There is no difference between the two, and therefore the results that have been given are, you cannot be anything other than the true results of this election that Uhuru Kenyatta did with the elections. And it's very interesting, because how is it that we are finding so much fault with the presidential tallying, and yet we are very quick to accept all the others, from the MCA all the way to the members of parliament, to the governors, to the senators, and yet the process was the same. And the tallying that was being done, all of it at the polling centers. So for me, I would really like to urge the NASA coalition that this country belongs to all of us. You must accept that the Jubilee coalition have won the day. And I know what has been happening, really. The last two elections have been very competitive. And you can see even the numbers. They are not very far apart from each other.
All right, Joyce,
so we need to reach out to each other.
Thank you. I think that we've got a very clear idea of both of these opposing points of view. Irungu, coming to you with the final thought for this programme here on Al Jazeera. Whilst the two sides are squabbling, what kind of damage is being done to society in Kenya? How far away, to put it another way, is Kenya from the terrible scenes, the appalling violence of 2007, 2008?
I don't think there are any signs that we will go to the state that we were in 2008, because I think the maturity of the NASA leadership and the Jubilee leadership will pull us back from that process. I like to be hopeful that this is the case. And we must remember that in 2008, we really saw, over 1,000 lives lost, hundreds of thousands of people displaced. But that affected 5 provinces, several tens of counties, as we now call them. Whereas in this case, what we are seeing essentially is 2 counties and 2 or 3 wards that are affected by this. And this is not to minimize the loss of life. I think, as we've said, there may be up to 30 lives that have been lost in the last day or so. And 1 life is just 1 life too many. So I do hope that this resolution will come quickly. I do hope that NASA will focus itself on a legal petition or any other non-violent path to press its own case. And I do hold out to the colleagues that they are mature and that they are responsible, and that this is the path that they will take. And I know that even as we speak now, there are press conferences taking place where NASA is engaging the nation in its point of view. And I hope dialogue will come to prevail over violent demonstrations and provocation that might lead our law and security forces to cause further loss of life.
And the real problem in Kenya, Irungu, is the fact that the ethnic divides, if you like, the fault lines in Kenyan society are those of ethnicity that come to the fore and are exploited by political tensions.
Well, like all modern democracies, we have several fault lines. Identity is one of them, and ethnicity for us is the key issue, but no more different than the United States of America, for example, with racism. We also have class inequalities and geographical inequalities, and all of those really come into this moment, in a moment of tension, and therefore need to be managed very carefully to ensure that we don't allow that which divides us or that separates us or distinguishes us to divide us, and rather than, I think, as has been said by both the other speakers, as Kenyans, find a Kenyan solution to this problem that hopefully will give us more confidence in elections going forward.
All right, can I thank you all at this point then? Joseph Simekha, talking to us from Nairobi, Joyce Laboso, talking to us from Bomet County, and of course, from Irungu, Houghton, also in Nairobi. Thank you all very much indeed. I'm sure this is a conversation that we could have continued for a lot longer. Now, if you want to see that programme again, anytime you like, you can go to the website, aljazeera.com. Should you want more discussion, as I'm sure you will, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. I'm at Martine Dennis. From the whole team here in Doha, it's bye for now.